When 9/11 happened, I remember everything from that day like it was just happened, still to this day. In my process, I did a actual sketch on my big desktop calendar. Hey everybody, welcome back to the FIP Printing Pros podcast. I am your host, Josh Dynison, and along with me, I got my fellow co-host, Chris Lockwood. Today, our topic and what we're going to be covering is to get a little know more about me and my background and kind of a little bit about my story. And Chris is obviously going to help me kind of navigate that and ask me some questions along the way. So this is what we're going to be talking about today.
Awesome, man. Well, let's get started. Everyone has a beginning to the story. And like most entrepreneurs, I'm sure it started before you actually got into business. So back us up. Let's kind of just start at the beginning. How did you were in the military first. So yes. Was that right out of high school? Or?
Yeah, right out of high school.
Okay, so why'd you join? Tell me a little bit about your military background.
So to do that, I kind of need to go back a little further to really understand, I guess, my motivation to why I ended up joining the military. The biggest part that really started that is when 9/11 happened. Mm-hmm. When 9/11 happened, I remember everything from that day like it was just happened, still to this day. I was in my home. I was getting ready. I would watch. We only had rabbit ears, in our house. So that's all we could afford. Free, I guess is what it was. It wasn't anything I had to spend money on. But anyways, I would watch whatever would come on. Sometimes it was Clifford the big red dog in high school. Yep. I would watch that while I'm eating my cereal.
Eating your Cheerios and getting ready to go to school. Yep.
Or Caillou. Do you remember Caillou?
Yep, I remember Caillou. Yep.
Whatever was on, I would watch that while I'm eating my cereal, getting ready for school. And obviously the news came through and popped in about what had just happened. And this is before social media. This is before any of that stuff where, we would constantly just get information like the drop of the hat. So it was kind of uncommon to get breaking news type stuff popping in on TV and things like that. I just remember like the chills that went over my body seeing what was happening. Obviously still to that point, it was just the first plane. And so, we there was a lot of assumptions that it was an accident, something happened, malfunction in the plane. And then as I'm literally having to walk out the door, I want to say it was right when I was walking out the door, right around that time frame was when the second plane hit. And that's when like, you just knew something was different. Yep. I still had to go to school. And obviously I'm in Nebraska at this time. So I was nowhere near New York or anything like that to where I had to, be concerned what was going on at that moment necessarily, where I was at. That day of school, we've never done it before, but they literally pulled TVs in our rooms and we literally watched like the news all day long.
When you think about it, right? Just thinking about that, because I was already in the Army when that happened, but I could imagine being in school and I was just thinking about when you were saying that, like what other time in our history has school basically shut down for that kind of breaking news? I could think maybe the moon landing, JFK assassination.
Yep.
What else? What other time in our history would they have pulled the TVs into the classroom and basically everything shut down for that? So
in my time in school, that's the only time I can recall. I don't recall anything else like that happening to where they would stop school and we watch it on the news type of thing.
Yeah. So what grade were you in when that happened?
That was
2000.
That was 2001. I was in ninth grade.
Okay, so you were at the beginning of your high school career.
Yeah.
Right. We just got attacked. You spend all day watching this.
Yep.
In the news. So fast forward to the decision to join the Army at that point.
So that day, I still didn't make my decision, obviously, to be again in the military or anything at that point, because I don't feel like I was had enough emotional intelligence at that point to fully understand what I was feeling that day. But I just remember what I felt that day was different than a lot of people around me was feeling. A lot of people were like saying comments like, I'm glad I wasn't there, or, you know, things like that, where they were almost like, glad they weren't there to have to experience that.
Yeah.
Whereas my thought process, I was actually like having a feeling of wishing I could have maybe been on one of those planes and could have maybe stopped something. Even though I was a little ninth grade kid, you know, that was still my mindset of like, I wished I could have maybe been there and I could have done something to not let them take over the plane, and maybe I could have stopped it. And, you know, obviously the realistic expectations of that being what could really happen is not, you know, more than likely realistic, but that's where my thought process was. And again, I didn't fully understand what I was thinking. I still, you know, was very thinking about sports and girls at the time. You know, that was what my mind was on at that time in ninth grade. So, so then really fast forward to, it was right about, almost graduation time. And I get asked this question sometimes, and I still to this day don't even remember which prominent school shooting it was. But there was a prominent school shooting right around the time when I was going to be graduating. And again, I had that same feeling that popped in my head. This is important to understand where my thought process was. I wanted to be a teacher for elementary school. So that was my plan. Was I was going to graduate high school, go into college, and then become a teacher to teach elementary because I love kids. And all that kind of stuff. So that was my original path in life that I was planning on taking. And then when that prominent school shooting came on again while I was still a senior in high school, again, don't remember what it was, but obviously, again, I had that feeling again of now I'm thinking mindset wise of I wish I was one of the teachers at that school and I could have stopped that from happening, or, you know, did something at least less lives would be affected from it. And then I was at a friend's house, and his dad was a veteran. And I was kind of explaining my feelings on it and what I was thinking. And he's like, you know why you're feeling that way, right? And I was like, I mean, not really. And he's like, you want to protect people. You have that in you that you want to be that person that wants to protect people. And I was like, oh, I mean, I guess I never
never thought about that could be the reason.
Yeah. I never really like at that point. I mean, yeah, I would say I was a protective person by nature in a lot of ways. Like I've always been the type, and some of my friends get annoyed, and, you know, because I'm always like, like making sure they're, you know, doing certain things to make sure they're safe and things like that. Even to this day, like my friends, if we go out for the night to eat or something like that, like, hey, just text me when you get home type of thing, you know, like, you know, stuff like that. Like it's just in my nature, I guess. But so that's really what brought me to my decision eventually, is that I now realize that it was a protective feeling that I was feeling, and that was ingrained into me. And started having more conversations and thoughts around that. And my first thought was actually being a police officer. But to be a police officer, you have to be 21 years old. And there's other things obviously that they try to require to be a police officer. But in the military, you could be 18.
Yep.
Or 17 actually.
17 technically, yeah.
So that was my way in, is okay, I can't be a police officer right now, but then I got recommended. I have two other brothers who are in the military as well. One was in the Army, one was in the Navy. So obviously I was able to kind of talk to them a little bit, and you know, they had told me that a good stepping stone if I want to be a police officer would be going into the military. And other people had told me the same thing. And so that was my choice. And then I ended up joining the military Army. And it was military police was my job I chose. And so obviously that ties in together with policing, different type of policing, but similar.
Okay.
So
you joined, was that right out of high school?
That was right out. Well, so there was like I worked for like 6 months before that. and then I ended up joining the military.
Okay. So was it active duty, reserve, guard? What'd you do?
I went into the reserves.
Went into reserves.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so I still was working and whatnot and making a living and trying to build a career in the same time frame before while I joined the military. So that was still kind of all going on. Obviously, with the reserves, you only have to do weekends once a month. However, my time frame when I went in was 2006 November. I signed up very end of October, and they gave me an additional bonus if I left within 11 days.
Ooh.
So, hey, at the time I was trying to make a living too. So I was like, and I had no girlfriend, nothing going on in my life really that I was tied there. So I was like, 11 days. All right. Give me an extra, I don't know what it was, 5K or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, I'll leave in 11 days for 5K. I don't care. So ended up doing that, and then ended up getting back in 2007 around, would have been Mayish, somewhere right around there. And I was actually going to be going for my first drill being back from basic training, and one of my family friends who was also in the Army had been killed in Afghanistan. So that I ended up getting a call shortly after that before the funeral. From my unit, and I ignored the call because I thought they were going to ask me to like be, I don't know. I was like not knowing all the things and how the military works yet. So I assumed they were going to call me for the funeral to try to like be honor guard. I don't know why that thought was in my head, but I just wanted to be a part of the funeral as a civilian because he was a civilian friend.
Well, you wanted to be there to support the family and everything. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that ended up being the call to tell me I was deploying to Iraq.
Oh, so they thought you were ignoring. It's like, all right, he's already heard. Now we got to go chase him down.
So I was in that middle of that process of now like mourning the death of a family friend who had just passed away overseas in Afghanistan.
Now you have to go.
In Afghanistan, not Iraq. And all of our family and friends are mourning that loss. And now I have to tell them that I just got the call. So it was, I didn't tell people for like 2 weeks because I just didn't want to drop that on them. And they already had a lot of emotions going on and everything like that. With the loss of Jacob was his name. And so that was definitely a big kick off to my military career. And with me being in the reserves, obviously I had to like juggle job and military life.
What kind of work were you doing at the time?
So at the time I was actually construction. It was doing some like construction work. However, once I got the call, I actually wanted to do something that I really truly enjoyed. And I went and started working at a daycare, and I was the elementary teacher there, and taught them before I had left.
Okay.
So that kind of got a little screwed up too, because I was also going to start college, online classes. But I had to stop that because they told me we were going to leave in October. So if you're not familiar with the military, sometimes leadership can make a huge difference in what is going to happen. And I had packed up, quit my job, said goodbye to everybody I love, except for like the very people like right next to me, like my dad and really close friends. Literally 2 days before I had I had left to go to that particular drill where we were supposed to be leaving and starting to mob, which is what they call it. I called a buddy, and I asked him how he was packing. Was he packing this, that, or the other? And he's like, "Why are you packing all this stuff?" I said, because we're about to deploy. So I got to take it all with me. He's like, dude, did nobody call you? They changed that to January.
Wow.
So my leadership didn't call me and tell me.
Well, they figured you were going to ignore him again, so why even bother calling the guy? We'll tell him when he gets here.
Yeah.
That'll teach you.
So, yeah, that was my, again, very entrance into military life. And it was, I dealt with some things that weren't pleasant. But thankfully, before we actually deployed, we had like a whole shift over of leadership. And that leadership was on point, and I loved working with them. But that was just another setback. So I canceled college, which I could have did in a semester, because we didn't end up leaving until January now. So now that kind of messed up that plan. So, but yeah.
Okay, so you end up deploying in January. I take it. You're over there for what, a year?
13 months. Yep.
13 months. Okay. So during that time, obviously, you're just doing whatever you're doing over there, policing the world and all that kind of stuff. You come home. Now, at any point up till now, so now you're a year and a half out of high school, still not to the point where you can become a police officer. Had been any thought whatsoever about being a business owner yet?
No.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess there's always like a small thought of like, because my dad did a little bit of business, his dad did a little bit of business. So like there was always like a thought of like, maybe someday I'll do that. But in my mind, someday was like in my late 40s, 50s.
When you got old and you were in your 40s.
Yeah. Not like in my, it's still developmental ages and young adult age range or anything like that.
Okay. So you come back. What do you do when you come back? What are you doing for work now?
When I got back, first of all, I took some time off. I had my own struggles when I came back. Even I didn't. Sorry, excuse me. By the way, I have voice issues sometimes, so I apologize. When I got back, basically, the struggles I was having, I never went what the military would call AWOL. I was always communicative, and made sure they knew what was going on or anything like that. I wasn't trying to like run or from my service or nothing like that. But I basically wanted nothing to do with the military when I got back.
Yeah.
I had very hard feelings against the military, and it wasn't anything they did necessarily. It was just the nature of the beast.
Well, you were in war, man. War is hell.
Yeah, and the hard part that I struggled with the most with any of that was I know some of the people that were really in like the full on like war, hardcore war. And my deployment, I would say, was on the scheme of things of war was easy.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, like I said, I had a family friend who had passed away from, an IED, and was killed. So obviously he was in the trenches and doing all that stuff. So like, I always felt this level of like, I shouldn't feel this way. I had it easy. I kind of didn't want to talk about it because I felt like I was just being a weak person by, having the struggles I was having mentally and things like that. For the most part, I just kept it to myself. I wasn't the same person when I came back. I just hid out in my basement, didn't hang out with people. And everybody that knows me is, especially then, not as much now, but like, especially then, like I was the life of the party. Not like I've never been a drinker or anything like that, but I was the guy, just loud, obnoxious, crazy, having fun. So that part of me was basically like gone. Like I didn't want to see people. And I literally was never home. I was always at people's houses, hanging out with people, doing stuff. And I just pretty much hung in my basement for the longest time. And I don't even know how eventually it changed. I think I just had to force myself back into the workplace and do it. And I just kind of tucked it in there. That's part of me. So eventually you talked about what I ended up doing for work. eventually I ended up getting a job as a cell phone salesman. So
Good
at
Lord.
a local cell phone store that
Yeah.
people here would not even know about. I don't even know if they're a store anymore. They probably got bought out at this point. I don't know. But
Cricket Wireless or something.
no, it was called Viero Wireless.
Viera Wireless.
Yep,
Yeah.
in Nebraska. Again, I don't even know if they're still a thing, if they sold out, whatever.
And
But
it's probably some old guy that owns like 12 towers and
no, they had them in several. They were in Colorado, like honestly, like 5, 6 different states in the Midwest. And then they used like AT&T towers to get their full service or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I did for a couple years, and I think I did it for about a year, not too much more than a year, and then I was 21, and so then I started applying for police officer jobs. And in my community where I lived in Norfolk, Nebraska, I applied once and didn't make. I got deep into it, but didn't get in there. But being the person I am, I don't take no for an answer, and so I actually asked to speak to the chief afterwards, and met with him, and I said, "Totally understand you didn't choose me, but could you help me understand why you didn't choose me? Is there something I can improve and do better for next time you're hiring so I can get on?" And he loved that, first of all. Anytime you're interviewing for something like that you really want, I totally highly recommend something like that. Makes you look good in the eyes of them. So I ended up asking him that, and then he told me that I need to go back to school for criminal justice, get some education under me on that, because obviously I have my military background, but getting a little education on side of it, which understands some laws and how that all works. So fast forward another year, I think after that, somewhere right around there, they weren't hiring yet, but a department within 35 minutes of me, which is Columbus, Nebraska, was hiring. And I applied for their police department. And then shortly after, I had already started the process with Columbus PD, which, first of all, like when you hire on a police department, it's like several month process. It's you apply, then there's a testing, then there's a physical test, then there's interview, then second interview, third interview, then background checks, then
so it's not like the Army where you join and you leave in 11 days. It's going to take a little bit of time.
Then polygraph, then you have a detective assigned to you to break down everything in your life, call your ex-girlfriends.
And how big are these police departments we're talking about? Like, give me an idea of the size of the town.
This department had 40 total officers on it, and that's including like chief and detectives and all that kind of stuff. And then the city size was about 26,000.
As a comparison, my hometown had 6 cops.
Oh, okay.
And 3,200 people in it. So
So it was a decent sized city, and Columbus was basically almost same size department, same city size, everything. So go back to that process. I ended up getting down to the final 2 of Columbus PD, and I was still kind of almost final stages of Norfolk PD, which is where I lived. But they hadn't made any decisions. Well, the chief of police of Columbus called me and said he wanted me to come in. Well, I know he's not going to call me in to tell me I didn't get the job. He would have told me that over the phone. So I knew I was getting the job. So I called the chief of police at Norfolk PD. Well, I had to go through some roundabout people to get to him, but and told him, I said, "Sir, I just want to let you know, this is," because I was very upfront with them that I was in the process with the other PD, so they knew that already. But I said, "I just want to let you know, I own a home here. This is my hometown where I grew up. I want to be an officer here. I want to work for you. But I totally understand if you can't make that decision right now. But if you can't, I have to accept this offer from them. And if I do so, then I'm not going to back out on it once I accept it." And at this point, they wanted to see me the next day. So he had 24 hours to basically tell me if he wanted me on or not.
Yeah.
So I kind of forced his decision early. And he's like, "Give me a little bit and I'll call you back." And within 30 minutes, he called me back and said, "The job's yours."
Nice.
So that's how I ended up getting on the police force in Norfolk PD. And then I served there for 5 years after that. Okay. So at that point, I had 8 years in the military. And I was just on the tail end of my military career, but at the very end, part of my contract was 6 years active, 2 years IRR, which is
inactive ready reserve.
inactive ready reserve. So during that period, when I was on that last 2 years, is when I moved over to the police force.
Okay. So you're a police officer for 5 years.
Yes.
So obviously there's probably 1,000 experiences we could talk about, but if I remember you telling me before, somewhere in that point is when things kind of started to change and the entrepreneurial kind of bug started to hit. So
yeah,
what was going on during that period to get you into your first business?
So again, it wasn't necessarily that I was thinking business. It was more so circumstantial because during the middle of my police career, I ended up getting married. And once I got married, that changed a lot of things because now it's not just me having to deal with all the things that go into being a police officer. Your life basically changes totally. You have to be a representative of the community. You can't, I mean, not that I had to change much about my personal self because not like I'm a bad person or anything like that, but you're held to a way higher standard. So you have to make sure you're, doing everything in the right possible way, even speeding, which I still can't say I followed that the best, but, going in public in such a small town of 26,000, people know you're a cop. And one thing a lot of people maybe don't realize, but a lot of criminals are in the restaurant business. Your cooks, your servers and all the stuff. And, retail and things like that. So literally everywhere I would go, I'd get death stares and things like that because people know I'm a cop and they don't like it. And it wasn't even that I treated them any badly, a bad way, but it's just because I was a cop.
So was that the part about being married that you had to think of, because now
there's somebody else.
What they feel about you is being transferred to her.
Yep.
So it wasn't so much, I just want to make sure I understand, it wasn't so much you were more worried about something happening to you in your line of duty. It was more how your job was affecting how she was treated in public and seen in public. Is that
correct? Okay. Yes. In particular, I ended up arresting a guy on a DUI, and he ended up getting released, and then within the next week, we see him out in public in the mall. He was working at one of the retail stores. And I had always told her that basically if she ever sees me separate from her, it's because I probably saw somebody that I've arrested, and I try to not let them be seen with her, and make her a target in any kind of way. But I must have did it too late, because followed back up a week later, after he saw us in the mall, I got a call where somebody was trying to break into a house, and I was the first responder there. And just about when I was about to pull in, I got the caller called in and say, "Hey, they're leaving in this vehicle." And I just passed that vehicle, flipped around on them, chased them. They ended up bailing out of the vehicle, and I ended up having to tackle him, busted up his face on the ground from when I tackled him. Wasn't too happy about that. And while I'm taking him back to the jail to book him in, the guy had said, "I saw you with your girlfriend." Didn't know it was my wife at the time, and he's like, "I saw you with your girlfriend the week before, and see what happens when I see her again." And that changed a lot of my protective self, and I'm protective of anybody in general, but then you talk about my family, you get a different protective side of me.
It gets way more personal at that point.
And I'm pretty calm, cool, collected. I don't really get upset too easily. It takes a lot for it to get a rise out of me. But that particular situation, when he did that, I actually had to call my sergeant to meet me at the jail. And he's like, he got there and he said, "What's up?" And I said, "You got to take this guy, because if he says one other thing about my family, I don't know if I'll be able to hold back." And he said, "Say no more." So he took him over for me, booked him in, and I went back out on patrol. So that's one situation. And then after that, then I had somebody show up at my house 4:00 in the morning, yelling and screaming outside my house. F the police over and over again. Then he had a portable speaker, the song F the police, like playing. Again, this is 4:00 in the morning. So it just started to get to the point where it was really affecting between not even wanting to go out in public and eat or anything like that, or shop or anything like that. Plus then that both of those situations and stuff, it kind of started to get to the point where it just wasn't the most ideal life with a family involved.
That's something I don't think I've ever really considered. When you're a police officer, I don't know why I never thought about how that would affect the family life. I always kind of thought, the wife is going to be concerned, something that happens to you on the job, but that can really happen at any time.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, it's more dangerous for police officer, firefighters. So I never thought about that. That's a whole new spin on it. But what that does put me in the mind of, though, is that perception of your private life becoming public.
Yep.
Right. That flows in a lot of ways. And for all the business owners and stuff like that out there that are hearing this, your public face, for whatever your business is, figure out what that effect can have on your family too.
Yep.
So if you're running a shitty business, and all of a sudden you do a customer wrong, they're, and they see you out with your family, be like, oh, you're the guy, you're the one that come and screwed up my whatever. So
yeah,
it's a little different for a police officer, but just thinking about that, I never ever considered that before. So.
Yeah, and another reason why I decided to leave too was just the shift in policing in our country.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that between when I joined and from when I left. Was 2013 was when I started being a police officer. And a lot happened after that. There's the whole Ferguson stuff. There's a lot of other things that, kind of happened in it all. And departments started to become very political.
Yeah.
Instead of backing their officers. And don't get me wrong. There's many officers that do stupid things and they deserve to get what they get. But even the officers that were doing the things right by the book and what they're supposed to do, if there was any social media outcries, they would just get thrown to the wolves because they played politics instead of backing their people. And that's where I was like, okay, I can't have this happen to me, because unfortunately people, in situations, as a police officer, it's not going to look pretty on video. Yeah. Somebody fights you, somebody resists you, and they have to be arrested. Sometimes, it's not going to look pretty on video.
Well, especially when it's selectively edited, and we can go into that whole, mess. But.
And I can speak from a police officer's standpoint of, some officers can take it too far where they're like overly, like on edge too much, but I can tell you every car I walked up to from a traffic stop, or every house I walked into on any call, or even sometimes just being parked on the side of the road while I'm trying to type up a report, that feeling that somebody could walk up on me, take me out, or pull a gun on me, anything like that, any moment was always in the back of my head. And I always had to have that thought process. And it's hard for anybody to wrap their mind around and really understand the mind of a cop. And that's why I think some people need to give some officers a little grace. Yeah. But again, I want to be very clear. I'm not the type that just backs the blue to back the blue. Like, ones that mess up, I'm actually probably the first one to call them out.
Yeah.
And want them to be punished and kicked off the force and whatever else, because I've had some personal experiences that I've actually felt that way about, that I've had not had a good cop. That should probably not be a cop, how they handled situations.
Yeah. It's a tough job. It's one that the people that are willing to do it and do it right, God love them, because we need them.
Yes.
But the jackasses that are out there's some people that they want the power, they want the control, and we don't need that. So.
Exactly. Yep.
But I think your mindset of from all the way back to, the ninth grade, when you're like, man, if I was on that plane, I would have kicked their ass. Right. I think, people with that kind of that protective mentality are what we need. So that's,
and that's part of the reason why we have a lot of struggles in our police departments right now, is because it got so political that now people don't want to be cops.
And your social media just is running, so many.
So now our departments, there's people that are out of shape, that don't have the knowledge, and honestly have no right to be a cop, honestly. But there's not many people out there that want to be a cop, so you got to take what you can get. So, but anyways.
So fast forward. Now you want to make a change. Yep. The police force is kind of shifting away from what you want. What are you looking at doing? What are going to be the next options for you?
So after being a police officer, I realized I can never probably work another regular job, because even as a police officer, you have so much freedom. You don't get me wrong. You have your corporal, sergeants, captains, people above you that you do have to answer to for certain things, but daily basis. It was me. Like, I created everything, like I would get called to places, to go handle situations. But like outside of when there was no call, I was creating traffic stops, trying to find, certain areas that were troublesome areas, trying to make sure, keep the community clean. So it was me, like, getting to kind of do my own thing.
Yeah.
So that freedom and that, like, almost feeling like it was all, I didn't have to answer to somebody, which ultimately I did, but it didn't.
Well, you answer to the public, but you get to make your own schedule, not stuck behind a desk. You're, the police car, they call it the shop or whatever. Yep. You get to kind of go and do and be out there in the world.
Patrol around the community and stuff. Yeah. So the other thought, again, like, go back to what we talked about. I thought 40s, 50s, that maybe I would eventually get into a business ownership. But this was kind of now like the perfect timing that I'm like, well, if I'm not going to be a cop, then I mean, might as well go ahead and jump into this journey now. And me being a police officer, one of the things that, I would always come across is kids that were doing stupid things, getting into trouble, drinking at young ages and drugs and things like that. And I'd always ask them, well, why are you doing this? Like, as like, better than this, and why you keep getting in trouble? Because a lot of them are repetitive. And I would try to mentor them as much as I could and trying to get them to, not do those things. But almost all of them said, there's nothing to do in this town.
Better be glad they weren't in my hometown. Yeah. 3,200 people, remember that?
But that was a lot of their excuses, and rightfully so. Our city really didn't offer much for kids. Like, there wasn't much to do. And so back at that point, trampoline parks were kind of the new thing, but weren't like all over yet. Yeah. Like now they're all over. But at that time, it was just, the big cities had them, that was pretty much all, you could do is have that. And so that was something that I always wanted to do, but also Ninja Warrior was such a huge thing back then too. It was like American Ninja Warrior was brand new. And then I personally went to a rock climbing gym when I was in Canada one time, and it was the coolest way to exercise and / have fun and I've ever done. And so I had the business idea that came up that I wanted to do like a combo. I wanted to be where you could have a trampoline park, a Ninja Warrior course, a rock climbing gym, and then over here, a 24-hour gym, just regular gym. And I ended up finding all of these things. And what they would do is I found these vibrating like bracelets that the parents and the kids could all wear. They match up and they sync together, so the child and the parent together. And so the parents could go rock climb or go to the 24-hour gym, work out, and let their kids kind of just go play freely. And if anything happened or whatever the case may be, or time to pick them up or whatever, their bracelets would vibrate from the parent side. Yeah. And then they'd be alerted to come over to get their kids.
So at this point, you'd never actually seen a indoor trampoline park, or had you seen one of those?
Yeah, before? In the big cities. I was at a bigger city and I did it myself, and I loved it. But again, the combo I've never seen, where 24-hour gym, rock climbing gym, Ninja Warrior, and trampoline.
So I think you brought something that we could pull out and take a look at here real quick.
In my process, I did a actual sketch on my big desktop calendar that I laid it all out.
Let's turn it this way. We're upside down.
What's that? I laid it all out and put it together where got all the 24-hour gym on this side, trampoline park, Ninja Warrior course, and the far left rock climbing gym. And I ended up eventually, again, this is the start of my business.
So that was your business plan is the drawing.
Yeah.
That's where you started. Okay.
So I am basically for 6 months, I ended up putting everything together. I found vendors that could build all these things. There were some like certain companies that did these type of things. And then I found a property right next to Walmart, this open property. So it's perfect too. So literally good, like constant traffic there. Yep. Found a builder, got a quote. Everything that I needed to happen for the business plan, it was all together. Down to even like the grippy socks you have to get for like the trampoline side of things. And then I ended up setting a meeting with the city and met with their economic development team and presented this idea to them. And even they loved the idea because again, they agreed there wasn't much in the community like that really like for entertainment and for children and everything like that. And they actually were going to back the land part of it and basically help me purchase the land as a part of this journey because they wanted it in the community so much. And then what I ended up doing was my wife at the time there, she was working at a promotional product and apparel company.
Hold on, let's back up real quick. I just want to get a couple of details here. So you were already off of the police force at this time?
Yes.
Or so you weren't doing
No.
Oh, so
I was still in the police force.
Okay.
Yes.
So, but you knew that it was going to be, we needed to do some kind of transition. So you started working on this. And how old were you at the time?
28-ish.
28. Okay.
29, 20. No, I was 30.
30. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you're about 30. Okay.
Yeah.
So hadn't quite made it to 48 when you could be a business owner at this point. So you're fast forward a little bit, right? Okay. So you're getting everything together. You got business plans, you got drawing, you met with the city and all that kind of stuff. Now go back to the printing.
So my wife at the time, like I said, she was working at a promotional product and apparel company. And her boss had started her company from scratch, which was what I was going to have to do, was start from scratch. It wasn't an existing business with a customer base or anything like that. And that was the only thing that I was a little leery and like, kind of more concerned with is like how I build that up with no prior history or anything like that existing. And went to her for advice, sat down, talked with her. She gave me some different advice and things that she kind of went through and did.
The owner of the company, right?
The owner of that company. Yep. And then roughly about 2 weeks later, her and her husband asked my wife and I to go out to eat with them. And that was also weird to me because at that point, I had personally never been invited to really go out to eat with them. It was, always involved with her and their employees and stuff. But we ended up showing up, and while we were there, they kind of basically said, "Hey, would you like the business?" Or not like that, but it was basically during the conversation, it was offered to us to take over the business. They had kind of foreseen my wife at the time possibly eventually taking over, and the other lady that worked there, but at the time, the other girl that worked there didn't seem interested or anything like that. And obviously I had an interest in business, and they kind of saw the writing on the wall. She was probably going to come with me to run that business. And again, this is all assumptions. I don't know what really was going through their head. I'm just assuming. But anyways, then after that, it was more so, okay, do I start from scratch with this whole project that was going to be millions of dollars that I was going to have to put myself in debt immediately, or this company that's already existing, has a customer base, a reputation built up in the community, and was way less money to buy. After a little bit of talking it over and thinking, we ended up purchasing that company, and we ended up doing a seller financing, so I didn't have to get a loan or anything like that. And the way we structured it was they wanted 50,000 down. And at the time, we didn't have quite 50,000 to just fork out, but I had roughly about, half of that we could give. I'm a very, very minimalist, save as much as I can type of person. So it was kind of perfect timing. But part of that plan, we ended up kind of negotiating with them because I didn't want to wait another year to save up more money to then get the 50,000 down payment. So I ended up negotiating with them to do 25,000 down. And then I would come on as a partner, even though technically, legally, I wasn't a partner. Like we didn't get like profits of the business or anything like that. I would just come on basically and help with the sales and different things and try to build that up. So my commissions that I was going to make as the salesman would then now go towards the rest of that down payment. I had to take a huge pay cut, like almost $1,500 a month or something like that pay cut for my base salary.
As law enforcement?
Yeah, from law enforcement to go work there. So ended up deciding to do that. We were already in a good financial point that it really wasn't going to hurt us for me to take that pay cut. I bought my house right after I got back from Iraq when the housing market was crashed in 2008. Yeah. So I got back 2009. So I got my house for $66,000, which is unheard of. So my mortgage was like nothing. So,
so real quick. So what year was this when y'all bought the business?
That was 2018 of January when we put our 25,000 down payment and for me to partner, and come into the business. And my main priority was sales and growing the company over that time to try to get as much commissions as I could to buy the business.
And that was part of the deal, was your commission would go towards that other 25,000.
Yeah, we would like go in a side pot basically. Yeah. So it never came to me directly. It was like in a side little pot that they would eventually just, it would go straight to them.
So you got your base salary, so you were still making money, but then the commission. Okay.
Yeah.
So explain like the process of seller financing, because I think a lot of people, like the trampoline park, you would have had to have gotten some kind of loan. Yep. There would have been banks involved. There would have been, one of these days we could talk about the SBA process for small business association loans and all that. But because this was seller financing, just explain briefly what that means and why that can be so beneficial to someone that wants to get into an existing business.
So seller financing is basically where the person that's selling the business, the real estate, whatever the case may be, is they basically kind of become the bank. Whereas instead of me going to a bank, so this loan was $350,000 or somewhere right around there. I don't remember the exact amount now. Instead of me going to the bank asking for $350,000, and then I have to go through the process. They have to check my credit background. Then they judge me about my age and everything like that.
That's the truth.
But and plus the hard part too is in business, the statistics, and I used to know these like the back of my hand. I don't remember them as much anymore, but it is a very high, basically failure rate. Yeah. And so obviously banks are more bullish when it comes to first time business owners and things like that on giving them loans and things like that. So it would have been difficult, because even as I talk more about my story, how difficult it is to get loans, this barrier to entry made it so much easier because these people are right here willing to be the bank. Yeah. And from their side of it, it benefits them too from a tax standpoint, because instead of getting a huge lump sum of $350,000, now gets spread out over time, and they don't get hit as hard on taxes because they're not.
What does that mean?
Meaning, so if you say a tax bracket, puts you in a different tax bracket. If they say they got an income of $350,000 that year, they're getting taxed on $350,000. Whereas if they take it as like a loan payment over 10 years, first of all, they're also getting interest. So they're getting the benefit of extra interest, making that money instead of just a quick 350 over the life of the 10-year loan would end up being, I don't know, 500,000.
Yeah.
I don't have the exact figure in my head, but something like that. And so they get that extra 100 plus K in interest that they're going to make, but then their yearly is a lot lower because, on our payments, I don't recall how much it was, but let's say 50K for the year instead of a 350K. And so that puts you in a way different tax bracket. So you're not taxed as harshly.
Yeah. So at that point, instead of paying 35% at 350, you're paying 15% or whatever, 50,000. Yeah,
exactly.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So it's mutual beneficial. If the person just doesn't want that lump sum to go have fun, Now,
is there a specific way that a seller financing deal has to be set up, or is everything negotiable?
Everything's pretty much negotiable because it's between you and the seller instead of a bank basically setting the terms of everything and you just have to accept them. Whereas, like I said, I negotiated kind of everything about that whole process where it was 25,000 down, then it's 25. I come in as a partner, you keep me employed and I can start developing some things before we take over. It was supposed to be a 2-year, at the end of 2 years, we had to have the money by then. So this January 2018. So then January 2020 was when officially that next 25,000 was needing to be paid. But at any point when we gave them 25,000, that's when we take over. 100%. So it could have been activated at any time once we gave 25,000.
Now, were you making payments on the loan of this, or did the payment starts once you took over? 100%?
Once we took over, 100%. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the purchase price was 350,000.
It was somewhere around. I don't remember the exact. Somewhere right around there.
So you're doing this. How long did it take you to come up with the other 25,000 based on your commissions?
So we obviously, they were doing roughly a little over 400,000 on average, basically, over the previous so many years.
Is that annual sales?
Yes.
Okay. No, that's sales. That's not profit or
sales. Just okay. Yeah. Gross revenue. Okay. And my first year, I basically was just out selling as much as I could. Obviously, some of the things I was also doing within the business. We never had any UPS deals, discounts that they had on the business. So we did a lot of shipping with promo and apparel and things like that that we had to get in. So I ended up negotiating deals with UPS, got it down to almost like a 40% discount of then what we were spending. That obviously cut our costs down quite a bit. All of our vendors through promotional products. Again, as a reminder from the first podcast we did, in the promo world, and this goes for every promotional product company, we use wholesalers and to do all of our products. Now there's a few products that some of us do in-house, like I can do 5 products in-house, but there's 500,000 products out there, so there's no way for all of us to be able to do it all. So we rely on wholesalers who do the work for us. So with that, I was able to go to my wholesalers in the promotional world and basically try to get deals with them to where I get my product for a cheaper price, and so that I can either make more profit and or have more negotiation room to be more competitive to get the jobs.
But, okay, hold on. Let me ask you this. So you're coming up with that other 25,000 by doing sales.
Yes.
So why were you worried about, for in lack of a better term, why were you trying to build her current business to be more efficient, to have bigger profits when it wasn't going to benefit you at the time, because you should be out there just doing sales? Why did you do that?
Because when I took over, I wanted everything to be ready to run. I didn't want to wait until I took over and then try to now start focusing on these things and that needed to be efficiency wise and things like that. I wanted to fix those right then and there, and try to make sure that we were ready to just roll once that we were able to pay that next 25,000 and take over.
So you were a partner in name,
yes,
not in profit sharing.
Yeah.
So that means you had a lot of leeway to make these changes then.
Yeah, I mean, I had to work with the current business owner, obviously, because it was technically still her business. So, I had to work with her and make sure, to do these changes. But, there was some back and forth sometimes because obviously it was still her business and she wanted to do things, the way she wanted to run it while it was still hers, understandably. But as I would try to express to her that, hey, I'm trying to do first of all, you're going to see benefits now of these things I'm trying to implement while you are still owner. It's going to help benefit you. But also, I want to set us up for success for the future when we do officially take over. Eventually she understood as, we would have conversations and try to go over it. And that helped a lot. So that's kind of how that started. And so we went in that first year of me kind of taking over, obviously too, you got to remember, I came in from military police to now promo world.
Yeah. I was going to ask how much, you had no experience with the printing world. You had no experience with running a business, or hell, you didn't even have experience even really working in a business.
No.
How did you figure out, I got to go negotiate with UPS and talk to these vendors? How long was that process to do that?
Well, to quote the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Lockwood, everything's figure-outable.
That is true. This sometimes takes a while.
So some of my, I say mentors, but I guess I've never truly had a physical presence of a mentor in my life to really help me. I've had some people give me some advice, and now I do. I have some people that are really involved in my life that I can really go to and ask questions. But at the time, I was just YouTube videos and podcasts of these people, and I tried to take in as much knowledge as I possibly could. And a lot of them were talking about you just got to do it. You're never going to have everything figured out.
I like that. Just do it. Just do what?
Yeah. Jump into it. And don't get me wrong. I never want to say just jump into it nonchalantly and get yourself over your head or anything like that. You still got to think about how you're going to make this work and can you make it work? But you're never going to have all the details figured out before you jump into it. And also, even if I thought I knew it, when you actually get into it, it changes. And you have to be the military. One thing the military taught me very well that I was able to take into my business life and even personal life for that matter is just adapt and overcome. Yeah. And that is one of the biggest things that I can say that I have the ability to really do. And don't get me wrong, do I still struggle at times and I fall on my face and things like that? Yes, but I pick myself up and I can persevere and keep pushing on. Yeah. That's I think that's one of the biggest things that a business owner needs, is because it's rare. Honestly, probably I would even say come close to saying never going to happen that being a business owner is easy. There's going to be stuff that's going to stop you and come in your way and knock you down, and you're going to have to try to figure out how you're going to navigate it and move through it. And I would definitely say in my years, I chose some very interesting years to jump into the business world. So that's what I would say about that. That I don't remember exactly what your question was.
No, you're spot on right there. So I want to get back a little bit to taking over the business, right? Because I want to kind of wrap up this episode with really diving into that business a little bit. You had to come up with another 25,000. You did that in about a year, right?
Yes, it was a couple months.
Yeah. So what percentage were you getting for sales as a commission?
You would ask me that. I don't remember now. I want to say if it was all on new sales. If it was new sales, I got 10%, I want to say. And then if it was the current customer base that we had, and I was kind of the main one that really went out there, talked to them, got the sale or whatever, and brought it in. It was 5% or something. Okay. Maybe it was less than that, but I don't remember. Again, my percentages also too were higher because I was brought in with the idea of I'm partnering. Yeah. It wasn't like a normal sales. I mean, every sales, especially with a salary attached to it. Usually those are kind of high for, and at least what we see in our industry. Other industries, I'm not quite sure what
Yeah,
that is.
well, I mean, just doing the math sitting in my head right now. I mean, let's just say it was 10%, and all it was new customers. You had to increase, not including the negotiating the other stuff that increased profits and everything, but you had to increase sales by 50% in 12 months. If they were making 400,000, you increased that by another 250,000 in order to get the 10%. If you were doing mostly current customers, it was 5%. That's $500,000 in increase to get the commission to go towards that other 25,000. So even if we kind of split the difference there,
Yep.
I would say, that's $350,000 in increased sales in 1 year.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
So I didn't do quite that. It wasn't 250,000 in the first year. It was 500 and like 40,000, something like that. Somewhere in that range was my first, with me being the partner.
Yeah.
I don't even remember if it was all commissions that went to pay for that, for the 25,000, or if we also was saving some money and then threw it in there. I don't remember how we ended up fully getting to the next 25,000. I think I was getting to the point where I was so eager that I just wanted to really just jump in and take control, and didn't have to worry about asking somebody's permission to do something. And again, there's nothing wrong with anything she was doing or that I had to go to her. Is just the fact that I didn't want to have to do that anymore. Like go back to, like I said, with my police officer, I didn't have to do that. And I wanted to be on my own, not have to answer anybody. So I was kind of just ready to get that done. And, we were able to save enough money that we could, on the personal side, I think that helped knock it out. So that was March 2019 when we officially took over.
Okay.
April 2019.
Yeah. Okay. So you're able to complete the buyout. Now you own the business. During that time, what was the most challenging part about learning what you were doing? Was it just the print industry in general? Was it the business aspect of it? What was the most challenging part?
So I feel like I have like a natural sales ability that I can, as long as I got a general concept, I don't really need all the nitty gritty details of like how the intricate things are and how it works. If I can generically know something, I could sell it. Like that's one of and again, I think that also this now refers back to my policing side of things, where I learned how to really like talk to people, and because I would face people in their worst moments of their life, whether that's, anger, sadness, whatever it is, and groups of people fighting, and I would have to like basically have these conversations, calm people down, get them to come to, make them feel like they were the winner, and then make them feel like they were the winner, and then come together and like all the things the skills that I developed through that process of like basically knowing how to learn different personalities and mesh with them and get them to like me, not like, whatever, all the different things. Cause basically you, as a police officer, you kind of have to become a chameleon a little bit, and sales is very similar. You have to kind of become a chameleon. You gotta, they technically call it, I think, the mirroring process or whatever in sales, where you basically, whoever you're talking to, you mirror a lot of like what they are to mesh with them. So like if they're very outgoing, I'm outgoing. If they're laid back, I'm laid back, like just different things like that, is knowing how to do that. Again, I forget what your question was, but
no, we're just, what was the hardest part about, getting into the business world? Was it learning the print industry, or was it learning the just how business operates?
I think for me, the hardest part was just not knowing what I didn't know, and the stress of business. That in itself was the biggest thing for me. One of the things I didn't mention is where we go back to where I was struggling with my PTSD and stuff when I got back. I got to the point once I got back into, so when I got to one of the jobs I ended up taking to help me get my policing career was I ended up going to be a security guard at a sex offender treatment center. And so basically it was like a prison, but we only housed sex offenders. So I kind of, again, felt like I had a sense of purpose again of back in the realm that I was known to as protectiveness. And then I became a police officer. Again, that's my role, my sense of purpose. Now fast forward to business owner, I lost all my sense of purpose between military, police, protecting people. Now I'm behind a desk, or going and talking to random people, just trying to sell them a promotional item. Like listen, I'm in the business. I'm not trying to make light of it, but like, and going from a military police, like a promotional item, hey, buy my promotional item. Like it was, I wouldn't say degrading by any means. I just felt like I felt like I wasn't I felt like a failure in my own a weird way that like I wasn't doing what I should be doing.
You're not living your purpose.
Yeah. And that started to hit me. And so if I was to say anything, I would say that was my biggest struggle, was that, and getting the daily grind of like, if anybody's never had PTSD, it's hard to really fully explain what that does to your mentality and like drains your energy and like focus and things like that. And when you're not in the right state of mind, it's so hard, especially business ownership, to be able to fully put the focus on things that you really do. So it's like an extra drive that you have to like almost pull out of nowhere to like do the things you have to do, for the company. So that would definitely be probably my biggest struggle I had. That and the stresses of the business alone were kind of tied together.
Yeah. So what did you do to find that sense of purpose? Because you definitely have to have that before you can really fully take it over. So what did that come from?
So I basically had to shift my mindset from, okay, this is not what I'm not the guy that's going to protect people anymore. I am the person that's going to build something. I'm going to, look into every situation. Like even so for my business, I know, I was very heavily involved in our chamber. I was an ambassador for the chamber there and heavily involved in the community. So like every aspect that I could do that like gave me some sense of purpose of like helping other people. That's my like, in the very last podcast with Julian, I talked about our community and things like that. And like, how I feel like I fill my cup up when I help fill other people's cup. Like that's like my kind of way. And so like starting to realize like I shift my gear. Now I'm helping these companies. How do I help grow their business with these products and that and things like that? Like I want to genuinely help them grow. And then obviously too, my family, thinking about my family, providing for my family and growing this business that maybe eventually a kid of mine would want to take over, or I don't know, just different things like that. That was kind of where my mindset was trying to shift into my sense of purpose.
Yeah, I think when you look at your journey, right, going all the way back to the 9th grade, and wanting to be that protector, and then you fast forward, you want to be a police officer, you want to be a protector, you want to go and be a teacher, and to not only to mold those young minds, but more specifically to protect them from bad things. Jumping into business, well, it's hard to relate those particular jobs that you had up to this point to I'm printing some shit on a pen so that people can hand it out. Like how I'm not protecting anybody.
Yeah.
But to be able to make that mindset shift to, maybe it's not protecting, but maybe it's helping other people achieve their goals, helping them, grow the community. Like that's a really, really good correlation between the two. And so that's what you kind of credit really being able to dive into being an entrepreneur now, being a business owner, is now I'm helping people grow their thing.
Correct.
And that's what I'm saying. That's awesome, man. So you bought that in 2018, took over fully in 2019. What happens next?
We do great in 2019. So again, going back to when we first took over, a little over 400,000. I don't remember the exact amount when we took over. Then I went and got it to about 540 in 2018 when I was just kind of the partner salesman person. And then 2019 we did 623 or something like that. So from when I first joined to then, 51.3% growth.
It's amazing.
And how I really did that is I was just expanding to the next city. So back to my police officer story, Columbus, Nebraska. I expanded to Columbus and tried to start going there 2 days a week and started a cold call, just going to all the businesses in the community and growing our foothold into Columbus. Because at that point we were just in my city, and that's all we were doing. So that was kind of the main thing in 2019. Then 2020 was when I was really going to try to take us to the whole new level. I was ready to try to go online, go nationwide, hire all these sales reps, 1099, which 1099 sales reps are 100% commission people. They're not technically an employee. And that was my route I was going to go. I had one person in particular that I had found that had a $2 million book of business. So again, remind you, I just did 623,000 for the entire company as a whole. This one sales rep was going to bring $2 million over.
Wow.
And the good thing is, with our business, at that time where we were at, we weren't doing production in-house. Everything was outsourced except for embroidery. My business partner, or my wife at the time, she was doing all the embroidery and things like that for us. But outside of that, promotional and
yeah. So describe, just real quickly, describe kind of what was the physical space? How did the business operate on a day-to-day basis? And what kind of products and stuff did y'all
We were in a very small building, maybe 400 square feet, if even that. Honestly, I don't even think it was close to that. And inside of it, we just had like I had an office, and then there was a little side, like front lobby area for the desk. And then, after that, in the back was a room for all the embroidery machines and things like that. So again, it wasn't very large. It was, like I said, probably 400 square feet, maybe something like that. And I really don't know though, but everything was outsourced other than embroidery.
Okay.
Because again, like I said, in the promotional product world, we all use wholesalers.
Yeah. So embroidery, you gotta do hats, shirts, stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. Just I was trying to picture it in my head. Okay. So 2020, January 2020, you're going to bring on this $2 million salesperson.
She was fully on board. We were kind of getting to the more just negotiating how much her commissions was going to be, which at the time she was getting a salary plus commission, very small commission, because once you have a salary, commission's usually so little on these type of jobs that she was going to make like 3 times if she came over with me with how much commission I was going to give her, because it was just going to be straight commission, not salary or anything like that. And she liked that because then she could grow it more and just build a huge business off of it.
Yeah.
And then everybody knows March 2020. This is all in that time frame. Everything happens with COVID. Well, events shut down, all these gatherings shut down, which promotional and apparel companies are basically the first thing to go.
Yeah.
And so we went basically to the point where we were doing nothing. And because there just wasn't nobody was spending money on it, because nobody knew what was going to happen, when we were going to be back to work, what was going on. There were some hybrid situations. Some people were just shutting down totally. It was kind of all over the place. And then this girl that was the $2 million book of business said, "Yep, I'm out. I'm not taking a risk. I'm keeping my salary. I'm not going to go 1099 now," which was smart on her part.
Yeah.
And kind of ruined my plans to now really what I was going to try to do. And so in that time frame, that's when it got pretty scary. Didn't know really what was going to happen. both my wife at the time and I, that was our sole life, which again, to that point, I had saved up enough money that we were just living off savings. And literally we did so well in that first year of owning it that we actually just started to pay ourselves in 2020. So we just started paying ourselves. We went the whole year before that not paying ourselves. And normally.
So hold on, let's back up because I want people to really, really understand this. When you say you weren't paying yourselves, how were you paying your monthly bills, cell phone bill, water bill at your house?
I pre-planned that because everybody told me to plan for roughly 2 to 3 years of not paying yourself.
Okay.
So before I bought the business, I made sure I had the safety blanket in mind and in there that I could live off of for a while.
So you had savings.
I had savings.
Okay.
And also, I felt confident enough in my sales ability that I would surpass that 2 to 3 year mark and be quicker, which I ended up doing. But it still ended up happening. But.
So what would you tell someone who doesn't have, they can't, or they, whatever the reason is? I mean, it's, that they can't save up 2 or 3 years. I mean, you're talking like right now today, I think, let's just say it's the average what people make is what you need. So I believe in Ocala, it's like $48,000 a year is like the kind of the median. So let's call it 50 grand.
Yep.
Let's just say people are like, there's no way I can just save $150,000 to be able to go into business and do this, because that's on top of $50,000 for the down payment or, the $25,000. So now you're at $200,000 you got to save up before you can go into business. So what do you recommend to someone that wants to get into business, but like that just seems impossible to be able to do that?
Well, my situation was a little different because, again, like I said, I was very lucky that I got the house I got for $66,000.
Yeah.
So my mortgage was not much. And I'm also a minimalist, so I don't really didn't do much, didn't have to spend a lot of money. So our costs that we lived off of was so minimal that people would be shocked what we lived off of because I made it work so we could save up money to do the things that we ended up doing. Now, what I would say, obviously, to people that need to do that is, because that's not totally realistic, especially in today's age, $66,000 is not going to be a thing you can do. So minimize your life down to as much as you possibly can. Be a minimalist. Get roommates or move in with people. Save money. Go back in with your parents. And I'm not saying you have to do these things, but I'm just saying if this is what you have to do, these are different options. Like basically live way below your means, because I think that's the biggest problem everybody has these days is they live way above their means, and that's why they get themselves in financial troubles, because they live way above what they actually make. And we all could really cut down what we spend and really budget. And that's what I love to do, is budget. And we can do a lot better overall. So that's my biggest thing, I would say, is live minimalist, get a roommate, live with the parents, save up whatever you can do to try to get to that point. Make the sacrifice. If you listen to a lot of people on different podcasts and stuff and how they grew up, that's how they did. They lived in somebody's basement or
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, because if you get an existing business, it's a little easier. As I'll talk further with my next venture, I got an existing business where it was able to basically take me on and help with the income side of things pretty quickly.
Yeah, we're going to get into that next journey on the next episode here. So let's wrap this one up real quick. Biggest piece of advice, you kind of just laid it out, minimalist, let's just say people follow that advice. What's the end goal? Why do I make those sacrifices now? If, I'm gonna lose money, I'm getting rid of my job, being a business owner is a pain in the ass. What am I doing this for?
The biggest thing that I always hear people say is like, oh, well, it's going to take forever to get to that point, or it's going to take 10 years for me to do this, that, or the other. And so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Well, you keep doing what you're going to do and you're going to be in the same place in 10 years. Yeah. Whereas if you just make the sacrifice now, do all the steps that it takes to get to this in 10 years, you will thank yourself later down the road for the sacrifices you had to make in those months, years, whatever it is that you had to sacrifice to get there. And I think that's where people make the mistake is they see how long it's going to take instead of just taking those next steps.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, you need to you need to see the end goal. Don't get me wrong, because that always has to be in the forefront of your mind and future planning and everything like that. But all you have to do is take those steps.
Yeah.
Figure out what steps it takes to get to that eventual goal 10 years down the road. And that is the biggest advice I can tell people is don't look at the big picture. Look at just the next step you need to take to build your life to the point where you want to be at. Because my goal is to eventually have that freedom in my life that I don't have to work. I choose to work.
Yeah.
Because right now, as we all, we have to work. We have to do the things that we have to do to provide for ourselves and our families and things like that. I want to get to the point where it's a choice that if I want to work or not, because I have my freedom of financial freedom to kind of do what I want. I'm nowhere near that yet, but that's the plan.
Well, awesome, Josh, man. Hey, I appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. The next time we're going to actually dive into what came after that and kind of leading up to where you are now. So y'all come back and join us on the next one, and we will see y'all then. Y'all have a great day.
It's time to step up. Yeah, it's grind time. No more letting up. No, running faster, further. No more running up. Yeah, giving my all. No more giving